All right, so in this episode, I'm going to talk about the Los Angeles housing, the impact of the possible 2024 Olympics, the fear of missing out, and what all this means if you are thinking about selling or buying a house. All right, Jeff Koga here, and in this episode of the podcast, I want to talk about kind of the LA housing report update and 2024 Olympics, the low inventory, and FOMO, fear of missing out. Now, I decided to do this update on the Los Angeles housing report is because, again, this past week and the last 2 weeks, I've been talking to a lot of guys in the trenches, right? I am in the trenches every day in real estate, but I want to talk about something about this because the lines are being drawn in the sand for what the housing market is going to do. And a couple of episodes ago, and the last LA housing report update, I talked about kind of the millennials and the millennials' position that they're taking when it comes to housing, right? And a lot of the millennials are on the fence, meaning that they don't want to buy because they think that there's some type of big crash that's going to happen because of the prices of real estate being so high. Okay, now there are absolutely truths to that, meaning that there's certain zip codes in certain parts of Southern California where the home prices have hit 2006, 2007 levels. But one of the things that people are not considering and they're not adjusting for those values is adjusting for inflation. All right, it's really important to, when you look at data and data points, is to do an apples to apples comparison. You have to pay attention to adjusting those numbers based on inflation adjusted indexes. So for example, if it's 2017 is being considered like the peak or whatever, then the question boils down to, if you adjust it, right? Let's just say the CPI index is a consumer price index, right? That's what most individuals, when they do quote unquote adjusting prices for inflation. So if you do that at a 3%, meaning that in a 10-year period from 2007 to 2017, that 10 years, that means that any value that you looked at in 2007, you have to add at least 30% on top of that. So if you start looking at the areas where it has hit 2007 levels, it's still technically, okay, you still have probably it's a 20 to 30% pop that you can get until you're at the same level. Okay, that's number one. And no one's actually talking about that, all right? Now, so in the space as an investor, developer, okay, is you have to be really, really careful because we are towards the top. It's not like 2011 where we saw declines in certain areas from 2007 where property values dropped down 50%, 60%. Okay, so we have to be very careful on the types of properties that you're going to acquire, but also at the same time, if you're buying, right, then you have to pay attention to what's going to happen in the future. But before I go into how the Olympics and how the low inventory is going to affect the housing market, okay, I want to make something 100% clear, okay, is that I get asked the question, is the home that you're going to buy, is it an investment? And the truth is, it is not. The utility of a house is shelter. Okay, why? Is because an investment pays you. And for easiest way to understand this is really simple. An asset or a liability. Okay, what's the definition of an asset? Asset pays you, meaning that if you don't do anything, you still make money. Okay, someone has to do something, but it still makes money. A liability is something that literally eats you, meaning if you don't do anything, it eats you. And a house, a place that you live, it is not an investment. All right, now the salespeople in the world of real estate community, they'll make you believe that it's an investment. Okay, now you can buy at the right time to quote unquote turn it into a quasi investment, but in the true sense of investment, it is not an investment. And then the people in the real estate profession makes you believe that it is an investment, but it really isn't. Okay, so that's number one. If you have the ability to qualify for a $1 million house or $500,000 house, like you basically you can, hey, take out a loan and qualify for that. I recommend individuals all the time to buy rental properties in a great area where it can cash flow and make you income. Okay, and or if you're a business owner, I always tell individuals if they're on the fence of like, hey, should I buy or should I not buy? Then I said, hey, I highly recommend for you to actually use that same amount of money that you have for your down payment and reinvest it in your business to grow your business. okay? So you can make more cash. And or the best case scenario is to just sit on cash if you're not 100% sure on that. But if you get into a position, meaning like you're going in to acquire something or to buy something in the sheer sake of because you think that the home value is going to go up, it's a sure way to get your ass handed to you. And if you want to see the counter perspective of, let's call it the doom and gloom people, okay, of the next housing crash, highly recommend to check out a blog called Dr. Housing Bubble. It's quite interesting. It's quite funny because it's such a counter perspective, right? Because if you're in the real estate profession, you have to somehow be, one, a little bit bullish on what's going to happen, but also at the same time, you have to be aware on what the counter perspective is. And if you want to see the, hey, what the housing market and what people are saying, go there. And not only just read the blogs, but what I highly recommend individuals to do is to read the comments of those blogs, because then you get an idea of what's really happening. Like, for example, in there, right, there's tons of millennials that are hopping on now, which is like new screen names that I see, right? Not the typical ones that I see over and over commenting, okay? And I've been commenting on that particular blog for like years now. People presume that millennials are lazy and they are broke. And the truth is, the people on there, they're millennials, the new people that are coming on leaving comments, and they are sitting on money, okay? Just like many of my friends. Why? Is because we know that we're towards the peak. We don't know exactly when it will turn, but we know we're there, and we're just looking for right opportunities. And you'll start seeing a story that a lot of people are not talking about, which is, hey, there are millennials that are sitting on $250,000 cash, $300,000 in cash, have absolutely no debt, make over 200 grand a year, and they're basically renting. They'll be on there leaving comments and say, I'll never buy in this high prices, I'll wait until the next crash. And then another person comes in and says, hey, I'm waiting for the next crash too, so I can buy my dream house. And there's tons and tons of people like that. So there's people sitting in cash position just waiting, okay? And when people always say that, oh, millennials are broke and they don't have any money, I say, man, it's not just the millennials. Look at the baby boomers. There's tons of baby boomers that are absolutely broke, okay? They're near retirement or they're retired and they got absolutely no cash in the bank, don't know how they're going to retire. So it's not a generational thing, in my opinion. It's more of a philosophy that they have, and it's just a financial IQ in terms of not being ready for what's going to happen. So based on that, I want to talk about a conversation I had with a developer, a friend of mine. Now, this developer participated in campaigning for a certain measure not to pass. That measure was called Measure S in Los Angeles. Okay, Measure S was forcing developers to be able to build these ginormous McMansions in Los Angeles, is because a lot of the baby boomers or the people who have owned the house for a long time in Los Angeles started complaining that the aesthetics of the neighborhood has been changing, meaning that people are buying small houses or have houses and then knocking them down and building this ginormous 4,000 feet structure on the property. So it changes the aesthetics, right? Meaning like you drive down a street and you see big old mansions, and or if you live in that neighborhood, you look outside the window and literally there's a wall because that house is. So he campaigned and actually gave a good chunk of money making sure that doesn't pass. Now that did not pass, but an overlay ordinance started passing. These forces certain areas that you can't actually build big houses, okay? Now, he said, you know what, here's an interesting thought. Do you know what's going to happen in the Olympics? And I was just like, yeah, and I'm aware of it. I thought he was talking about was the Olympics in Japan in 2020. Anyone that knows anything about what the Olympics does to a local community, it increases the business, right? Because there's so many people coming in. So not only that, but typically you see a boom in real estate as well. Happen in Brazil, happen in Utah, happen in London, happen in Greece, right? So it happens all the time. I know that that occurs. So I'm talking to this builder and he's just like, no, not that one, the next one coming up. I was just like, 2024? And he was like, yeah, man. He's all like, did you know that the LA is in the running for trying to bid to actually get the Olympics in Los Angeles? I was like, no, I didn't know that. So he was like, yeah. He said this, he's all like, it'll be really interesting because the baseline Manzanization ordinance is good for 24 months, and meaning almost 2 years. And that puts us in, as we're currently right now, is like 2019. And he said, it'll be really interesting to see what will happen if actually Los Angeles gets the AOK from, I believe what he said was like IOC or something like that. I don't know what it stands for, but I don't know what the I stands for, but I think the O stands for Olympics and C stands for committee, if I had to guess, okay? But he said if they get that, it'll be really interesting to see, because will we see a little hiccup in price values and then a skyrocket in prices if the Olympics is actually chosen to come to Los Angeles? And I was like, that's an interesting perspective. Okay, now why is that important? Is because if that happens and then the ordinance is taken away and that we're at 2019 and then builders start building, right? There's tons of new buildings being built. Now, what that's going to do is if people come in from around the world globally to Los Angeles and they start seeing tons and tons of new construction, psychologically what that starts happening is they're like, oh my gosh, there's building. I want to start investing here. All right. And that's where a lot of fear of missing out kicks in. And this is literally what happens when idiot money comes into marketplace, because so many people do not have the discipline to actually make a financial decision based on logic. All right. Many individuals presume that they're making decisions on logic, but really it's emotionally driven. All right. Meaning like this, there was tons of people who sold real estate right after they found out that Trump won. They sold off their properties because they were so fearful that Trump is going to destroy the country, not realizing the logic is this, is that real estate is a illiquid asset, meaning a decline of 50% value in real estate overnight does not happen unless we have like flat out war or something like that. Why? Is because you have to actually sell, and not only sell, but the buyer has to disappear. And it doesn't happen in real estate overnight. But in the equities market, like a stock market, yeah, 100% that can happen, all right? So I understand that position, right? But a lot of times that fear kicks in. And what may happen, and what I've been preaching and what I've been saying is that because there's so many people with money on the sideline, right? Because they're like, oh yeah, we're going to see the next crash, the next depression, or the bubble 2.0, right? And those people are literally like, oh my gosh, and they're like literally dead set in that position. Versus like, I always tell, hey, if you have an extreme position of something, it's really dangerous. You got to be able to see counter perspective on both sides, right? And I'm kind of like, just play as it goes, quarter by quarter, yearly, and then take those positions and make a decision. And it's even a conversation I've even personally had, even with my wife about this, is I said, hey, we have a certain price or strike price where, based on inflation adjusted value in the area that we have the house, is saying if it gets to that level, we have to seriously start considering selling. Okay, I haven't said that, hey, we're going to absolutely sell, but I said, hey, at that time, we have to seriously consider selling. And then if we do decide to seriously consider selling, we have to seriously decide where we would go next. And kind of the stuff that we've been throwing around is that if it hits that level or gets near that level, is to just possibly sell off and then just move to a different country. And then maybe even live there until we see the crash and or find other opportunities, or maybe go out of state where we can possibly sell that and get the cash and then be able to just buy something in cash, own something somewhere else, right? So those are things that you have to be playing in a position back and forth, okay? And you have to really, really pay attention to fear of missing out. Again, I talked to another friend of mine, very smart individual, another business owner, right? And they started getting into the conversation of Bitcoins, okay? Now, I've been following Bitcoins for a couple of years now, right? The cryptocurrency, or this quote-unquote currency that is supposed to change the world. So he started talking about that, and I was like, dude, I don't know about the crypto right now, because it's overpriced right now. And surprise, surprise, just this past week, we saw a decline. All right. And I know he said he put some money in it. So if he did and he put it in there, he just got his ass hammered. And you have to pay attention to that, because the fear of missing out is really, really crazy. And if you have never been in that, okay, just know that, hey, why are there things like Black Friday, okay, Cyber Monday? Well, Black Friday, you can see it, which is people line up literally in droves, okay, line up to get a quote unquote couple of % discount. Why? Fear of missing out. Okay? It happens all the time. Okay, so in the world of the investment community, in the world of financial IQ, in the world of understanding how to build wealth, understanding how to play the long game, is that you have to pay attention, put your emotions in check, because if you don't, that thing will put you up and down in a roller coaster ride, and you will literally lose out. I know that for a fact, because when I was swing trading, right, I thought I made the most brilliant move on a company called Tata Motors, all right? It's an Indian motor company, and at that time, when I entered that actual price point. There were, their price point was under $20 or whatever. So when you have a couple grand, like tens of thousands of dollars, you can buy tons of shares. So I thought that it's going to double. So I was just like, hey, you know what? I'm going to be able to double 40 grand to 80 grand like in a month. Okay. Because of an acquisition at that time of a Range Rover that happened. Range Rover acquired. And then I went into the game after that acquisition happened versus buying in the rumor. Immediately when that happened, boom, it tanked and I lost almost like 30 to 40%. Just a stupid move on that, right? So in the world of investing in the equities market, in the stock market, there's a line that says, hey, buy the rumor, sell the news. Buy the rumor, sell the news, okay? So the rumor currently right now is what? Real estate prices are going to go up. Now, the news is, we don't know because that's going to happen in the future. But the issue in the real estate, I'm doing that play, right, is that, as I said, is you have it's illiquid asset. And then physically, if you're using it as a principal resident, meaning you're living there, right, it's the emotion that kicks in because you're going to be like, oh my gosh, right? Let's just say it starts going up. You live there and you're like 2 years in there, 3 years living there. And you're just like, I don't want to sell. I live here, all right? Versus saying, hey, you know what, if it hits this price, you have to really consider and start thinking about how you're going to exit out of that, right? And cashing out. So again, be understanding what the heck is going on is because, again, there's stupid money in real estate where people presume that you can touch, right? It's a tangible thing that you can touch. So people presume that it's a much easier investment than anything else. All right. And that's why people go into it, not realizing in the fact that you're looking at a principal resident as an investment, but really absolutely it is not. Okay. Now, if you're going in there with that thought on saying it's going to go up, then with all means, what are you doing? You're being a speculator. And speculation is not investing. It's literally like gambling. And the smart investors are strategic on when they enter, when they exit. And they'll start looking at other things to be able to leverage off that. Prime example is currently right now, a lot of the smart baby boomers right now are selling their houses. They're absolutely selling, they're cashing out, and they're getting in cash and or taking some of the cash and then buying houses outside of where they're comfortable at, and they're literally paying it off, and then now at least they have a house that they don't have to worry about mortgages, right? So there are tons and tons of that stuff is going on right now, whereas I'm listening to a lot of my team as they're listening and working with sellers. Many of them that are selling are people that are 55 plus that are currently selling the houses, and they're cashing out, getting big chunks of cash, and or staying in cash position, and or buying rental properties, and or literally buying a house outside of California because the sheer fact of taxes in California are obnoxiously high versus anywhere else, and moving into areas that don't have state income taxes and things like that, right? So you got to be aware of that, and you have to play your cards right. And for anyone that says, well, I don't want to move, or I'll never do this, right? Just know, having an extreme opinion, like saying I'll never, is a really dangerous position to be in, okay? I'll never do this, I'll never do that, because again, the emotion that runs the word never is fear, right? You are so fearful that you throw out words like never or can't, okay? Versus what if? And then going down that rabbit hole and then really trying to make a decision based on that play. So that's what I got for you. I'm at the office here on this Saturday. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please pass it along, pass this message along, and challenge yourself to think differently. As they say, once the mind expands, it will never go back to its original state, and it is so true. So go out there, keep on expanding your mind. This is Jeff Koga. Love y'all. Take care, and bye-bye.